Hello friends, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, insane people, and everything in between. Hope you're all doing awesome today. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and let's get right into today's Reddit posts. Entitled mother digs up my garden to protect her babies from dangerous flowers. This happened years ago and I had actually forgotten about it, but my mother reminded me of it the other day. Some backstory. We live in a townhome, so 5 or so houses connected to one another. Each has a tiny little plot of grass in front to do with as we please, within reason and subject to board approval because this place sucks. Most people just do nothing and just let the maintenance crew cut the grass and trim the hedges and whatnot. Some people like to plant flowers, including myself, and my a-hole former neighbor, Entitled Mother. Entitled Mother was nasty to everybody in the neighborhood. She had 2 small children under 3 that she had 0 control over, but pulled out the mama bear bullcrap if anyone made any perceived slights against her family. I had recently planted some lupins in my little flower bed. A few days later, while I was out watering them, Entitled Mother comes up behind me and taps me on my shoulder. "You can't have those. Don't you know they're poisonous?" I actually didn't know that, but I was confused as to why she was telling me this, and stupidly assumed maybe she was concerned for my dog. I said something along the lines of, "Oh, Toaster, my dog, is never out here off his leash. I'm not worried about it." She scoffed. "I don't care about your dog. I meant they were toxic to children." I don't have kids. I was the youngest person in my house at the time, and I was maybe 17. So I told her to keep her kids out of my garden and it shouldn't be a problem. It became a problem. A few days later, I came home from school and all my lupins were ripped out of the ground and mangled. I couldn't prove it was her, but I know it was. She even made it a point to tell me what a shame it was that my pretty flowers didn't make it, and offered some BS gardening tips about soil. I was effing thrilled when she and her horde moved out. Someone asks, as a police officer, has someone you pulled over ever threatened to call daddy? And here's a response. Oh yeah, and it was the sheriff's 18-year-old daughter. Sigh. I pulled her over at 2 a.m. for running a red light. From my initial contact, based upon her language, attitude, and the odor of alcohol, I determined she was inebriated. I removed her to the rear of her vehicle. The entire time she was screaming that she was the sheriff's daughter. I knew that. The first step I conduct in my field sobriety tests is the HGN, horizontal gaze nystagmus. That's where I wave my pen in front of your eyes, asking you to track the movement of my pen. It requires me to place my body in close proximity to the body of the detained individual. On this night, that was my mistake. She sucker punched me in the face, broke my nose. Hard to believe a 120-pound female could punch like she did. She knocked me to the ground. I hit my dispatch panic button and the world responded. The next I knew, she's cuffed and stuffed, and the paramedics are wanting to transport me. We finally all arrive at the jail, and my supervisors interviewed me again. They were more concerned about my health than anything. I kept asking for a status on the prisoner, and their only response was, "Who gives a blank? Let's get you taken care of." Then the sheriff arrived. He spoke with my supervisors, both of them, the lieutenant and the sergeant. He spoke with my fellow deputies who also responded. Then he spoke with his daughter, confined in a holding cell. Then he approached me and asked how I was. He really was concerned about my health and the state of damage to my gear. We talked for several minutes. He apologized profusely for his daughter's behavior. I kept telling him it wasn't his fault. And then he said, and I'll never forget this, "This is a direct order. You will charge this miscreant with underage consumption, operating while intoxicated, assault on an officer causing injury, and resisting arrest. You do that and do it now, or I'll have your badge." And with that, he spun on his heels and left without another word to anyone. The prosecutor reduced some of the charges, imagine that, but she ended up with time served. Bail for some unknown reason took 2 days, a large fine and suspension of her driver's license for 6 months. Additionally, the sheriff had her apologize in person, in front of the entire patrol division, 60 deputies, and I understand the entire corrections jail department, 100 officers. You always hear about cases where people get off the hook because they have family in law enforcement. But this is the opposite side of the coin, where she thought she could do what she wants because her dad is the sheriff. But instead, her sheriff dad is like, nope, that's not happening. You're gonna have to take responsibility for yourself. Old ladies get arrested for accusing me falsely. This happened a few days ago and I am still really in disbelief. Sorry for any errors, English is my second language. I like fishing and my style is mostly done from sandy beaches, casting. It is 5:30 in the morning in early March and of course no one is there. I choose a place near my parking spot so it would be easier for me to transfer all my fishing gear. Just so you know, fishing with poles in my country is legal at every beach, as long as there are no umbrellas. No umbrellas at this beach. But out of courtesy, I never do it during the time that people normally swim, so mostly really early in the morning or after sunset. I start fishing completely alone on a huge beach, 5 kilometers of sandy beach. And it is so relaxing just watching the sun rising, drinking my coffee, listening to the waves, and enjoying life. At about 8 a.m., a car parks next to mine. Strange, since it was a huge parking lot, but at the same time I was bringing in a fish and didn't give too much attention. 2 old ladies got out of the car and sat right next to me. Again, we are alone on a huge beach, completely empty. I smile at them, thinking they probably saw that I just caught a nice fish and they are just curious. Boy, was I wrong. They both undressed immediately into their swimming suits and started walking towards the sea right in between my fishing poles. Excuse me, can you go like 10 meters away to swim? I am fishing right here and it might be dangerous for you. Entitled Lady 1 says, "We always swim here," and continue to move towards the sea. Yeah, you can swim here. Just go 10 meters left or right from the poles. As you can see, I am fishing here. Entitled Lady 2 says, "She told you we always swim here. You should move." But I am here now. The beach is empty and I am already set up. Can you please move just a bit to the left or right? You shouldn't be here. This is where we swim. And they continue going into the water right in between my poles. I look at them as they slowly go in. Not wanting to escalate the situation, I started to reel in one of the poles so that I could go a bit further from them, afraid that they would get hurt, even if the odds of them stepping on a hook was minimum since I throw them about 100 meters away, in a depth that they couldn't really reach the bottom. Before I managed to finish reeling in the first, Entitled Lady 1, who was in the water up to her knees, just touched the line of the second one and starts screaming. There goes my relaxing Sunday morning. They both came out yelling at me that they could get hurt, and they will call the police because it was illegal for me to be there. And so they do. I told them that I warned them that I was fishing, and nothing really happened, but they were having none of it. 10 minutes later, the police arrive. They go there almost running as soon as the officers parked and started yelling. I followed them to tell my side of the story. "What seems to be the problem here?" said the officer. "This man was fishing here while we were swimming and I almost died because of him." And the other lady says, "You should arrest him, he tried to hurt her." "How did he try to do that?" asked the officer. "I was tangled in his line and I almost drowned." "Where did you get tangled?" "Here." She shows the officer her arm. "There is no mark or anything indicating that you struggled," said the officer. "She almost died, officer. Arrest him right now, it's your job." The police officer who was talking to them sees the empty beach, the 2 crazy old ladies yelling at him with not a mark on them, and then asks me what happened. "Well, officer, I was fishing here when these 2 ladies came 20 minutes ago and sat right next to me. As you see, the beach is completely empty, but they chose to come here because they said this is where they swim. I warned them that I am fishing and that they should just go a bit further, but they didn't listen. I started reeling in the poles to eliminate any chance of them getting hurt, until one of them just touched the line and started screaming. "He is lying, we were here first, and he just came and started fishing," said Entitled Lady 2. "I've been here almost 3 hours, and I can show you all the fish that I caught during this time." Then something really cool happened. The officer asks which car is mine and which one is the old lady's. I show him my car and he goes there and touches the hood. Then he proceeds to touch the lady's car. He then returns to us. Do you know that it's illegal to lie to a police officer? Furthermore, falsely accusing someone? Both crazy ladies looked in disbelief. And the other officer asks me, "Sir, would you like to press charges?" "Yes, sir, I would." "Please put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest." They looked terrified and complied. You can see the shame in their eyes, and I am smiling, thanking God that these officers were so good at their job. It could have been such a different story if someone else was there. So for the next 3 to 4 hours, I was in a police station waiting to give my statement, smelling fishy and certainly wasn't as relaxing as planned. At least I wasn't arrested. I ended up dropping the charges since I had spoken with one of their kids, who was quite reasonable and apologetic. But still, that went into their record, and they probably won't try something like that in the future, to me or anyone else after this humiliating experience. P.S. This is a photo of the beach, not from the day this happened though. My entitled mother left our wedding because it wasn't sufficiently about her. When I, 31 female, had my wedding 5 years ago, we decided to host it at my wife's mother's house. We dressed up the garden and it looked magical. We were able to have a stunning garden wedding with about 100 guests, relatively cheaply. On the big day while getting set up, my entitled mother was buzzing around, making a complete nuisance of herself, trying to change how tables were arranged and allocated, and bothering both my wife and I while we were getting ready for the ceremony. Our friend, who was unofficial manager of the wedding, was doing his best to keep her satiated while also keeping her from bothering the brides. When it came time for the speeches, I made mention of people who specifically helped, and people who were a part of the wedding party. My sister was mentioned as she was a part of the wedding party, and my mother-in-law was mentioned for partially funding the wedding and hosting it at her house, investing a lot of time and effort. In the end, my entitled mother did not get mentioned, because she did not help, but rather hindered, and has honestly never done anything to support us. When it became clear she was not getting mentioned, her family started shouting at me from across the garden, reminding me to mention my mother. Out of surprise and shock, I made a quick mention, but I honestly had no idea what to even say. It made no sense to me to mention her. Shortly after, she left in tears, and she took her entire extended family with her, about a quarter of the guests. Most of them didn't even say goodbye. It was a devastating amount of drama for what should be a magical day. My dad handled it well and comforted us both. They are divorced. I don't regret not mentioning her even a little bit. All it did was highlight that she can't be trusted to participate in our lives in any important or meaningful way. The relationship has never been the same since, especially since she outright refused to apologize to my wife, even trying to compare her behavior with my wife being withdrawn at her family gatherings, since for some reason the entire extended family tends to pretend she doesn't exist. Totally bizarre. I'm glad my wife still loves me so much despite my insane mother. This really is a great example of someone being completely self-centered. Even if someone felt like they deserved to be mentioned in a speech and had their feelings hurt because they weren't, the reasonable thing to do would be to not make a scene at the wedding. Maybe talk to the person about it later if you really wanted to. But for her to go out of her way to leave a bad mark on a special day that they'll remember for the rest of their lives is honestly completely selfish. Now anytime OP thinks about her wedding day, she'll also remember it as the day her insane mother threw a tantrum and got 1/4 of the wedding to storm out with her. Anyway guys, that's going to be all for today. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe for more Reddit shenanigans. So take care everyone, see you next time.